Hey guys, the following is an interview I did with Drew Rouse of Real Game Calls. Drew is the real deal when it comes to hunting public land elk, heavily pressured elk. I know all the units that Drew has spent the last 20 years in, and they are some of the hardest elk hunting on earth. And these are the units that people come to me and say, hey, the elk don't vocalize there, the elk don't bugle, the elk don't come to calls. But Drew has proven those people wrong. He calls in bulls, and he calls in bulls consistently in those areas. And yes, Drew does make a call, and you're going to see from this conversation, he's very proud of that call. And we do specifically talk about calling strategies in this interview, but we don't dwell on it that much. We talk about a lot of broader strategies that are going to apply to you guys, even if the calling component's not all that interesting. As archery hunters or rifle elk hunters, you guys can get a bunch of actionable stuff out of this interview. I really enjoyed catching up with Drew. Just so you guys know, I threw up all my 2025 hunts and seminars on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. I also just restocked all my knives and my sharpener. But without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Drew. Guys, biltong, okay? I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Biltong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Compare that to your gas station jerky. A great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. Go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my discount code CLIFFG, CLIFFG for 15% off at checkout and to support this content. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Drew, great to have you, man. I think the last time I talked to you in person was in a parking lot in Avon, probably like 10 years ago. I think you handed me one of your early versions of your elk reel, and it's been a long time, man. So it's good to catch up. And the thing is, man, is I've kept in touch with you and watched you on social media. A lot of my audience, like I'll describe to them, I'll be like, hey, there are these guys that have hunted, over the counter, easy to draw stuff in Colorado for years, and they're pretty consistent over the years. And these are my thoughts why. And I talk about that a lot to my audience. And you're one of those guys, dude. I know you.
I try.
Know yeah. Well, I know you've had a lot going on in life, but for years there, man, I felt like you're pretty consistently, successful up in the mountains, and I know the general areas you were hunting, and they're not easy hunting, man. So I want to dive into that a little bit, but give me your history, man. Like Colorado, maybe the brief background on your elk reel and all that stuff.
Well, my story is, oh man, I'll give you a real brief.
Yeah, that works.
I started in high school working at a ski shop, and I wanted to be, for whatever reason, I started watching all these ski movies, wanted to be a pro skier. I was like, got this crazy notion, moved to the mountains, be a pro skier. And so that's what I did. I moved to the mountains. I worked at a ski shop. I competed in all kinds of different disciplines of skiing. I ended up skiing like for Vail Resorts and being like their little poster boy or whatever. They paid me to ski powder and video shoots. Didn't make much money, but it was exactly what I set out to do as far as like a goal. I said, I want to be a pro skier, make $1. And then I told myself, like, I started telling people, like, if I can do this goal, then I can do anything. And so like towards the end of that, I ended up owning part of the ski company that I was skiing for, which I ended up taking over the whole ski company. And in that process, I decided that goes back to what you were talking about, like hunting the public land and the really hard to hunt units. I was like, how can I hunt somewhere that's a little bit better? I need to make some money. So I was like, oh, I'm going to invent a better elk call. My friends are like laughing at me, like, that's ridiculous. And so I talked to my business partner and I was like, how do I make this prototype? And he was like, get some modeling foam, get a Dremel tool. And I was like, cool. I've used Dremel tools making ski boots for 10 years and, like modifying ski boots for people's feet. So picked up the modeling foam. I got some reed material and some duct tape, and I put together a prototype. Went over to my friend's house. We went to the top of, Bellyache Ridge, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they lived up at top of Bellyache. So we go up there, and it butts up to a big private ranch, and went out in the driveway and started using this call, making some cow sounds and some bugles. And we went back inside and they were like, well, that doesn't really sound bad. Actually, it sounds pretty good. And then we were looking out the window and a cow elk started walking down their driveway. So I
Yeah.
was like, all right, I might be onto something. And then, one little thing led to another to where I started making the prototype to where you could throw it at the wall. That was my idea. Like, I'm going to make this thing bulletproof so it won't break. And yeah, then started making elk calls, stopped making skis, and um, ended up getting a really bad whitetail deer addiction. So I moved to Kansas for like 4 years, and I went to Wisconsin. I bought a farm on the eastern shore of Maryland, which turned into like a complete and total disaster. But yeah, no more East Coast for me. Came back to Kansas like almost right away, and realized like the whole time like I should be elk hunting. I need to be elk hunting. I need to be selling these elk calls. Stop deer hunting all the time, and so I moved back to Colorado in January 2023, and had some life stuff come up where I just didn't hunt that year. But this past year, I finally got back in the elk woods, and yeah, that's been good.
Right.
So
And Drew, man, dude, your story, like, I think our, like, I think we probably have a similar personality in certain ways because I've gone on these little, these obsessions quite a bit in my life. And not to get too deep, man, because I want to jump back into the call stuff. I'm sure my audience wants to hear about it. But any of that stuff you regret, man? Like, if you're being honest with yourself?
I regret probably hitting my head so much skiing. Like towards the end of my skiing career, I had accumulated a number of concussions, and I actually fell in Utah so hard that I fractured my C7 and tore my ACL at the same time. So I've torn both my ACLs twice. I've had 2 microfracture surgeries. I've broken multiple bones, done this and that, but I regret hitting my head. Like
Yeah.
at anything, I probably should have hung it up a little sooner. I fell in Montana in 2012 at the free skiing world qualifier, and I hit my head like 40 times. I almost
Mm.
died. I had to have the microfracture surgeries from that. And so, like, I just regret that. I should have known when enough was enough. Like maybe at 32 instead of 37, I should have quit skiing. But
Yeah.
no, I don't really regret it because I grew up in Maryland and like I was obsessed with hunting. I fished all
Sure.
the time. My parents like didn't allow it. My mom would not let me go.
Really?
I had friends that bow hunted whitetails and they were like, "We'll take you. Our dad said you can come." And my mom's like, "No, you're not going." So maybe that's part of the spark that got my hunting passion so ignited because I moved to Colorado. Um, my neighbors gave us some elk steaks, and that was it. Like I bought a
Yeah.
rifle.
Hooked.
Yeah, I ate the elk. I bought a rifle. I got my bow. My dad had bought me a bow when I was like 10 or so. So I'd always shot archery and wanted to go hunt whitetails and just wasn't allowed. And so like once I went hunting whitetails, it was like this is something that I missed in my life and I had to go back and get it, like
Yeah.
so now
Dude,
yeah.
I think there's something to that, Drew, because it's weird, man. Like my upbringing was, in a sense, I think from somebody looking at it externally, was exactly opposite of yours, right? Like my dad was an outfitter. He was a hunting guide when I was a little kid, and in the elk world. And the thing that's crazy though is that he's always been somebody that wanted to do outdoor stuff with his kids. Like he always wanted to take us fishing, all that, but he did not want to take me hunting. That's like now when I reflect on it, I think because hunting was a part of his professional life, he didn't really have interest in taking his kids hunting. And dude, that I think developed into the same dynamic. Like dude, I remember getting up, an hour and a half before light and just like harassing my dad to go hunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having all, like, I remember being 8 years old, Drew, and like literally 8, 10 years old, like having all the shit in the truck, like getting all his stuff, putting in there because I wanted to go so bad. And, dude, I think that there's something to that. I think there's like something that if you're kind of denied something, it almost gets like entrenched in your brain a little bit as a passion, you know?
Yeah, like I hate video games and I didn't want to let my kids play and I think that really developed a passion for video games in my oldest.
Yeah,
So I
really.
kind of screwed that
Yeah,
up.
sure. Yeah. But it's
But
weird. I mean, it's counterintuitive in a way, but I think there is something to that. Probably not for everybody, but I think there is something to that. I do very few endorsement deals, and I do no paid reviews because it would affect the type of content, quality of the knowledge I could put out. So an important part of my business model is my membership group. I'll stick a link right here where you can sign up. There's paid and free options. I do a weekly live stream there. There is a thriving community of folks that are helping everybody become a better outdoorsman. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or if you're an expert, there's something there for you. Go join, guys. It helps me out a ton. It's the way to support this content and to support me. I'll see you there.
I could relate to your dad. Like, I don't want to teach my kids to ski, like I broke my
Yeah.
neck doing it. And like, I don't know how many friends that, I could tell you stories that make your blood curdle about like people that got buried in an avalanche touching another guy that was dying. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
like no one even talk about that. Like, I know people that died skiing and it's tragic. And I'm
Right.
not so sure I want to teach my kids. And I think if
Yeah.
I don't, and one of them's going to be in like, I want to be a pro skier. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I'm the one that can't sleep at night waiting for the phone call like I got hurt. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But no, dude, I appreciate your thoughts on that question because, like I said, it's
Sure.
pretty deep right
It
off
is.
the bat. But it's crazy, Drew, because you didn't mention anything about money and you didn't mention anything about like your career trajectory or whatever. Which, dude, when people ask me the question, I have the same answer, man. It's physical shit. Like
Yeah.
I fucked my knees up packing mountain goats. That would be like my one regret of my years guiding. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's interesting the physical thing pops up. I think it's because like it's forever.
Yeah. No, the concussion thing, like I had to quit ski. I mean, like I had to quit skiing because I would go skiing and I would get bounced around and I would get vertigo. So it was like,
Yeah, I got you.
this
Sure.
sucks.
Yeah,
I'm sick.
yeah.
I'm feeling sick for 2 days for what? Like, all right, guys, time. And then I was just too busy. So,
Yeah, sure. But dude, let's jump back to the call. So
sure.
you you said something, you started to go somewhere with the call that I thought was pretty interesting, like that first story of you using it. One of your buddies or whatever said, "Oh, like it sounds pretty good," and it wasn't like it probably wasn't this thing like, "Oh, that sounds like phenomenal" or whatever, but you got immediate feedback that it worked. And when I first was using your one of your original elk reels, and I'll give you my take on it, Drew, so you can
Sure.
comment because I think you've changed a lot. That thing worked really well in the same exact context, right? Like it when I would blow it, I wouldn't be like, man, I'm gonna go win a calling contest with this. It sounds like that sound I hear, all the pros doing. But when I would use it in the field, it would work. It would
Yeah.
work. It absolutely. One of the challenges with it is, at least for me personally, is I had some challenges monitoring the volume.
Sure.
Getting it so, and we can talk about that, but I want to hear your take on this, dude, because I think what has gone on in elk hunting a little bit, Drew, is that everybody is chasing a sound that doesn't necessarily sound like a elk, like a real elk.
Yeah. I could pick. I mean, like I'll say things that are controversial because I don't care, and like everybody talked all this crap to me when I came out, and like you shouldn't be making calls or this and that. And you know what? It's all good. Um, I could pick you out if you're using a traditional mouth reed. I can pick you out in the
Sure,
woods, and if I can pick you out with my little ears, what is a cow elk here? What is a
sure.
14-year-old cow elk hearing, or what is most bulls are stupid where I hunt. Maybe they're 4 years old, maybe they're 3 or 4, but they're not educated like those older cows. And if you make sounds that they can pick out, they just leave. The bull follows them. People are like, "Oh, he pushed his bull off. The bull pushed him off." No, no, no. He followed those cows that are really smart. They
Yeah,
heard it. They heard what you were doing, and so that's like everyone is chasing these sounds that these people make with these mouth reeds that are rather difficult to make. And when I started making my calls, I only listened to elk. So like
yeah,
I would be out shed hunting. Like I used to be crazy shed hunter before they enacted all these laws, and like I quit because like after they made the law, when you go out shed hunting, all you see is boot tracks. So it's like,
yeah,
okay, I'm
yeah.
not going to do this anymore, and I'm going to respect the law, and I'll just stop. And my dog was getting
Right.
old, but I used to hear a lot of elk and even mule deer, like in the springtime. If you hear like 100 mule deer that are herded up together, like they'll be mewing back and forth. But I would hear
Yeah,
elk, and like, I mean, that's just what I went off of. Like, I didn't look at what someone else was making for a call. I made something that I thought would sound more like an elk. So,
right.
and I think that's why the this wooden cow call is so effective,
Yeah.
is because of the sound. Also, because you can turn the volume way down um, to kind of keep a bull from hanging up. But like, yeah, everybody's chasing the same thing in the industry, and like to me, like I'm such an outside the box kind of person, like off in left field on my doing my own thing, and I always kind of been that way. Like I just didn't want to do, like when I used to ski, I didn't want to do backflips and front flips because they were easy, and like everyone did it,
Right.
and I wanted to have my own style, and so just a different kind of person. Um, like maybe socially awkward. My great great grandfather invented candy corn.
Well, okay.
Both all everyone in my family's a lawyer, so like my mind's just weird, and um, yeah. So
Yeah, but what on the call sound, Drew? Because I think this is like that nasally sound it makes. Like I can kind of do it on a diaphragm, and some people can kind of do it on a diaphragm, but it's different still. Do you
yeah,
think that? Do you think that's what? And I hear cows doing that, and I what you said about like cows. Dude, I personally think, Drew, that cows in an area they know other cows. Like you said, like
yeah,
if you're hunting over the counter stuff in Colorado, an an old bull is 3.5, 4.5 years old, just
yeah,
because they get the shit hunted out of them. So, but they're walking next to like grandma cows. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like 10-year-old cows or whatever up in the mountains. And so those cows, I think they tend to know each other because when I observe them, they have a pecking order like horses do. Like I've been around horses my whole life, and you
sure,
can if you watch like if I have 30 horses in a corral, if I watch them for an hour, they all know like who's next. You know what I mean? Like who's the king and then who's next and then every set of the pecking order. And I think elk are kind of like that, man. And I mean, you may have a, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I think if you come in with a sound that is like real obtrusive, those cows are like, all right, I don't know if that's an elk or not, but I surely don't know that elk. You know what I mean?
well, have you ever heard a mountain lion that sounds like an elk? Kind of.
I mean, I've heard the screaming sound before,
Yeah,
you
but
know.
they make a chirp that sounds kind of like an elk, and you're like,
Ah,
are they doing that to? Anyways, but my
no, no,
my
no, dude. No, no.
yeah,
Tell me about that, dude. So
yeah,
the
I've
theory is
heard
like they
these.
might be calling.
I mean, if you wanted to eat an elk, it's a good way to do it,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
and like, and then maybe it works. I don't know. I've heard him do it, and like, I mean, do mountain lions try and call in elk? I would if I was them.
Sure.
They're hard enough to
Yeah,
catch. You got to jump on it.
yeah.
They don't
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
weapon, but
Sure.
I don't know, and I think it is a lot of the pressure. Like, go to, I don't want to name a unit because like my friends or people that always, but okay, let's say Unit 36, and they can get mad at me because I don't care. I've always hunted there. It's terrible.
Yeah, sure.
Don't go to Unit 36 if you really want to get into a lot of elk or see elk that aren't on private, or like have elk that are easily accessed. It's not going to be the way it is, but
Yeah, but Drew,
you'll
that's
you'll
like that's
find you'll find so many hunters there that have been calling and calling and calling, and those cows, like you said, they live on the mountainside. And think if you lived in the neighborhood that you lived in with like 30 other elk, you always bedding with those other elk, like you said, they know each other. The bulls know
sure.
each other. The bulls can recognize each other by bugles. They hang out. Even the young ones, they're hanging out all summer, and then they're starting to split up and go their own ways. But like that would be like you saying something in the other room, and I'd be like, dude, I recognize that voice. That's Cliff.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, I go with that, and then when you start to bring in something that you said is like obtrusive, so trout that are pressured, trout that are unpressured will eat anything, any fly you throw over their head, drifts by, they'll, oh, it looks like a bug, I'll grab it. Trout that are
Yeah,
really pressured, they'll be really selective in what they're gonna swing up, open their mouths, and eat.
right.
So elk that are really pressured are like trout that are really pressured, where they're like, I've heard that, I've seen that, done that, like even something as simple as just raking a tree and walking might work better than making a sound that's inaccurate.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Drew, because anybody who's hunting, like I put like two big areas in Colorado, right? Like the flat tops in the Vail Valley, like that whole section, tons of over the counter, easy to draw tags, all including the unit you mentioned, but all the other ones, right? They're all the same, and the elk hunting is
Mm-hmm.
really, really tough. And then if you go down in the San Juans, same thing, right? It's just low density elk. Dude, 95% of the archers that you talk, or 90% of the archers that you talk to that hunt those two broader areas, they will say, Cliff, the elk don't vocalize in Colorado. What's your take on that?
That's not true. They
I
just
yeah,
they
but
they
dive. Why do they have that perception, man?
because they don't sound like elk. And I mean, like, I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but like, I'm the kind of person that would take his elk call, say these suck, throw them in the trash, and like I'll tell the people that make them that they suck. I mean, it is what it is. Like, I'm just that kind of abrasive person that like when I made skis, if it wasn't perfect, like I'm just gonna throw them away and start over, you know. And so like that's what I'm seeking is that perfection of that sound, and like I just feel like if you don't sound like elk, you don't really have a chance to get going. And so, like, there's people that are really great for a mouth read. Like my friend Monty, he lives in Utah. He's been bow hunting for 40 plus years using a mouth read. I hunted in Unit 61 with him this year. Like, I didn't hunt, but he had a tag, and I've killed a nice bull there. And so I was like, dude, I haven't been elk hunting much lately. I'd love to come with you and come call for you. And he jumped at it. So we met up, and he had a traditional mouth read, and I had this one. So I think I showed you this, and it's three
Yeah,
dimensions, but the sound is improved. Like,
yeah. Do the sound, man.
I mean, the sound is just is whether it's different or better is debatable, but I mean, I think it sounds more natural like elk. And what he was able to produce is like he'd get like one response, and I'd get going with this thing, and I'd get every bull in the mountain bugling. So I think that's just indicative of like they got to hear something that they want to hear to get them fired up. And if you're doing
Right.
something that's not great, then you're looking for a situation. So like the first bull that I killed in an over the counter unit, I killed with two Primos open reed cow calls that I found on a boulder or next to a boulder in the alpine in the wilderness area like years before that. So, but that bull, I believe that morning had cows. Another bull that came in and took his cows, and he was, like a 5x6. So he's not the mature bull on the mountain, but he had the cows. Then he had his cows taken, and he's bugling like crazy because I think he was pissed. And I used those Primos calls. Just I think the technique I was using that morning was like I was only going to call every third time I thought about it, and I was going to try and be as quiet with him as I could.
I got you. Sure.
And he came up the mountain screaming, came in 7 yards screaming, and it wasn't my calling though. It was the situation that I put myself in randomly. To this bull had just lost his cows, and now he needs cows. He's got to have more cows, and so he came
Right.
in. And so I think that's what you're searching for. If you're not a presentationist, and you're more of like, or you're not an imitationist, you're a presentationist. And that's like a trout fishing analogy. Like you're either trying to throw a perfect fly or trying to throw the fly perfectly. So if you're not going to sound perfect, you got to get in that situation where that bull wants to play. You're
Right.
not maybe calling in a whole herd of elk. You're calling in that one particular bull that's all in that situation that he is callable. And so like if that's what I would tell people that like, you know, I'm not going to try and tell you like you're going to need my calls. It's going to make all the difference. But I mean, like I've got people that have killed like 5 out of 6 years over the counter, and they're like, since I used your call, it's just been like night and day. So like that's part of my argument. Like you can be the presentationist and the imitationist at the same time. You could be looking for that scenario, but you can also fire up the whole mountainside by sounding better.
Right.
And I mean, like I saw that this year over and over and over again. Like I would go into an area the elk weren't talking, and I would get them to talk, and I would do that excited like, and then even like adding a just to make really, really accurate, mature cow sounds, and then do some calf sounds back and forth, add in some bugling. And like I've been around elk, I know what they sound like when they're excited, and trying to sound like an elk herd that's on the golf course in Cordillera in a highly pressured unit. If you can get that sound, you'll call in elk. Like, and they might come in quietly, but
Right.
uh, anyways.
Yeah, and no, but I want to. It's I get it, Drew. I don't. I mean, I think what you're trying to do is trying to be conservative about like hey, you're not saying like you got to have my calls to do what we're talking about. You're just saying that like there is some like where other people are not getting responses out of elk. It might just be that the sound's not quite right, or you're making them. You know what? You know what I think is a little. Well, I'll save that for down the road. I don't want to go off on another tangent, but
Sure.
what's interesting is they it's crazy how different they can be in different areas, and that's like I guess what the path I want to go down here, because that's why I get so many questions. And one of your explanations is just that hey, you gotta sound like elk. Now, when you say that, are you just do you, there's two trains of thought, right? Some guys out there talking about calling, they're like, hey, this sound means this other sound means that. And so I'm trying to like literally have a vocabulary with the elk. Is that your mindset, or do you just have like certain situations that you do certain sounds and you don't really know that they're like a vocabulary or not?
Well, there's a little bit of both to that. So like what I'll do is like I'll listen to like if there's a lot of videos on YouTube that you can pick up where cows are talking to each other, and like if you
Mm-hmm.
want, send me a message. I'll DM you a video of a mature cow with calves, and, and I'll tell you which is which. I don't know what exactly that they're saying, like, but I know what the sounds that they make when they are talking to each other.
Yeah.
And like you can pick up, like for example, like this mature cow sound. They make that sound, when
Yeah.
they get frustrated, or like it'll be like the lead cow, and she'll start adding in her,
Yeah.
start just doing stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think we're similar this way. We might have ended up in the same, just by like default, Drew. Like I do a lot of mimicking, exactly
Yeah.
like how you describe. And dude, that sound you just described, it's funny because sometimes I'll call it like a comeback call. If cows wind you, like a group of cows are like you're sitting somewhere and you're posted up to ambush them, and you can hear them moving through the trees, but you can see them, right? And like I've had this several times. I've had them bust me on the wind. As they run through the trees, I'll do that sound you made, and you can stop cows. Like
Oh yeah.
you can stop 50 cows at once, and they're not necessarily going to like turn around and come running at you, but they'll stop and they will mimic that sound that you did back and forth. Like
Yeah.
it's intriguing.
I think it's like when you're turkey hunting and you have like if you're mimicking a hen back and forth, and you get
Yeah.
pissed her, like I think that she's getting pissed, or I don't know if they have that emotion, but like whatever that does, that seems to fire up the gobblers when you're talking back and forth to a hen. And I think that when you're talking about cow elk, that's just being able to like, you're trying to say something to them. What are you trying to say to them? I don't know, man. Like people are like, oh, the elk
Yeah.
are saying this and that, and I don't want to talk crap about people. It's like, if you have your opinions, and I'm sure you're entitled to them, you're probably more experienced elk hunting or whatever than me. I just have different mindset, like just different.
Yeah, well, you figured out what works, and that, dude, and I think it's like, for me at least, Drew, it's trying not to overcomplicate it, right? Like,
Yeah,
I would love if I could figure out exactly what an elk is trying to say,
yeah,
but what I realize is the more I try to do that, the more I fuck it up. But instead, if I like, dude, my go-to strategies that are just like will kill elk really consistently is mimicking calves. Like mimicking calves, I've killed more bulls and called in more bulls
Well,
that way than anything.
calves are the most vocal elk. I mean, they don't know better than to shut up. Like they just
Yeah. Yeah. And
doing that stuff all the time.
if
Yeah,
you mimic them, they'll come right to you.
yeah.
Like it's a brain dead strategy, but it's like they do a sound, just do the sound, and they come to you. Yeah, and then a lot of times bulls will show up. But anyways, that's like an aside. It's interesting that I mean that's a lot of my strategies, that like mimicking. But what's interesting, dude, you ever notice, Drew? And I think the turkey analogy is good. A lot of people will get like if my thought is if you get a bull to bugle once, or even if you get a cow to respond to you once or twice, and then you get silence, I think that's an indicator that you're not sounding like an elk. It's almost like they're shock bugling or they're shock mewing. Hey, does that ring? Do you have any thoughts on that? Guys, no excuses. All the stuff that I talk about on the podcast, all the stuff I talk about on YouTube, you can do it, and you can do it with me. There's a bunch of hunting, fishing, spearfishing experiences on my website. Go to pursuitwithcliff.com. Right on the top on the menu, click experiences. It'll walk you through all the different options. These are trips oriented around making you better. It's about the skill set, and it's about improving as an outdoorsman. So if that's you, that's what you want, go check them out and join me on the next one.
Man, I've been using these elk calls since like 2014. Trying to think back, elk usually, if they've been called at a bunch, they might come in, circle you, and win me. But like I don't get that. Like
Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, like if my calls are awesome, like if I tell people like I've sold the elk reel for years and told people that if they wanted their money back, I would give them their money back, and no one trades their money for their elk call back.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then like, and I'm not, and like, it is what it is. But yeah, I think that if the elk goes silent on you, that's not a good sign. If he's been bugling and he shuts up,
Yeah.
what's the reason why he shut up? Like, okay, so like I called in a bull that came in silent last year, and then it's the only elk I've ever shot in the shoulder blade, and I drilled him right in the shoulder blade like a dummy, shot too high. I thought he was like 30 yards, and he was like 18, and I put it on his heart and shot him right in the shoulder blade like a freaking dumbass. Lost that bull, and I think he healed up, but like he had been bugling all morning, and then he bedded and shut up, and so I let him shut up. I sat there, had my lunch, freaking play with my phone, waited an hour, and then I dropped down to the bottom of the valley, went up the face that he was on, got in his bedroom, started doing that excited, like I said, trying to sound like a herd of elk on the Cordillera golf course that are happy as can be because no hunters within 2 miles, and try to sound like that. He got up out of his bed, came right in. So he didn't bugle, but there was another bull that I called in the day before that was a 6x6, and he came in like I came up to the top of the ridge. I started making that happy herd sound, like just cows calling back and forth, acting like I was a herd of elk that came up over the opposite ridge, came up to the top, right at dawn, start bugling, cow calling, sounding like that. But he got all fired up the bottom, started bugling, started coming in. Actually ended up being 2 bulls, but like I thought it was one. And bugling, coming in, going, what is he doing? He was like coming up the mountain, breathing like that. I could hear him the whole way. And he never shut up. He came all the way in, and he busted me trying to draw on him at like 6 yards. So, but I think had he shut up, what was wrong? And then he's not going to come in. So I agree with that. Like, I can't diagnose like what you're doing or like what someone is doing when the elk shut up on them, but like I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's not like turkeys will shut up and then they'll come in.
Right.
But I don't know, maybe.
Well, I think it's like, dude, it's I guess in my mind, the analogy I use is that you can go out and make a turkey gobble by slamming your door.
Yeah.
And the thing is, dude, what's crazy, Drew, is, and this has been a progression for me personally, because most of my hunting has been the exact type of hunting we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Guiding in the flat tops or whatever, just elk that get just hunted hard all the time. But in the last 3 or 4 years, I've had the opportunity to guide on some pretty crazy exceptional ranches, and on those places, dude, elk will bugle to a door slamming.
Huh.
They'll like absolutely. I've had or they'll the minute you turn off a side by side, elk crank up. And it's because it's like they're doing the same thing turkeys do. Like a door slam, an
It's like
owl call.
a shock
Yeah,
bugle. Yeah.
yeah. And
Well,
dude, if you go out, um, if somebody's learning how to bugle or whatever, and you crank a bugle and a bull bugles right back, it doesn't necessarily. I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily mean that bugle you did was good,
no.
because if they crank up once, all that means is they're like, oh, there's a noise.
Well,
You
and,
know
and
what
I
I mean?
think there's different levels to what I was talking about. So like the accuracy and sound might not apply to bulls as much as it does cows, in my opinion,
Oh,
because
okay.
um, I've heard some bulls that are just like, what is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
thing? And like bulls, they generally have like a set of different sounds that they will make, like each bull, but it can really vary. Like
yeah,
it could sound like a freaking garbage truck backing up. Sometimes you're
yeah,
like, what
yeah,
was that?
yeah,
Did
yeah.
he blow out his voice box or what did he do to himself?
Yeah, it is weird, and some of them will bugle the same way. Like you'll hear a bull in a canyon one day, and you're like, he's got kind of a goofy bugle, and then 4 days later, you'll hear that same bull again.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh yeah, that's the
No,
same
that's what I
bull.
mean by like they they recognize you saying the cows recognize each other's sounds. The bulls definitely do.
Sure.
So, and like I said, they hang out with each other all summer, so they know each other.
Oh
And
yeah, 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 for sure.
they will very rarely like. I think deer fight more to the death than elk. Like I think elk will kind of like square up to each other and tangle their tips and walk away more than I think
Yeah,
deer is just they got problems. I've seen whitetails in Kansas like where I make this little deer call where I've blown that thing in the field and two whitetails have tried to like kill each other over me like 30 yards away and I'm like I think deer just have I think it's more testosterone or something than elk do, but or maybe it's the size of the elk. They respect each other's size a little bit more, but
yeah,
anyways, they
yeah.
know
Or
each
they have,
other.
yeah,
They
they have
know.
established pecking orders, and you see that when a bull's like hanging out and another bull starts coming in, and he knows that bull. A lot of bulls will just walk off.
You see them, and you'll
Yeah,
even see them mirror each other, where they'll walk side by side and look at each other, and
yeah,
that might
yeah,
be enough for them to be like, okay, you're bigger, I'm going to leave. Like you said, he just
yeah,
leave.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
like,
Just move out.
I'm not trying to get stabbed with a 20-inch G4 in my eye.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Let's
No,
leave.
yeah. No, I think you're right, man. But Drew, I want to hear, because I'm sure this is a question a ton of my viewers have, man. Because you've been hunting stuff for a decade plus or a couple decades that a lot of these folks are hunting every year. Um, what does a day look like for you, man? You're in one of these units, and that's you can just buy the tag, over the counter
Sure.
tag, whatever. What is it? How do you approach a day? Like, and let's assume it's a day that you don't know where any elk are at.
Um, if I don't know where any elk are at, I'm
Well,
gonna
hey,
like,
hold
okay.
no, no,
Let's
no,
say this.
hold on, Drew, because I stumped you with that. So
Yeah,
comment on that, dude. You tend to know where some elk are at.
I would know where
Oh,
they tend to be, and that's from experience. And so, like, that's one thing I'll
yeah,
tell people: like, pick a unit, pick a spot, stick with it. And I'm like, maybe you hunt there a little bit, and you're like, you never see any elk sign. Okay, go pick another spot, but like, pick a place and learn it. Like people that read the Bible all the time, they can quote it. They know it really well. So
yeah,
me knowing these areas, um, having an idea where elk go when they escape pressure, like that's a huge part of the puzzle. And
sure,
so like when you start out elk hunting, like you're starting at zero. I started at zero. I didn't know where elk were. I just hiked and hiked and hiked and hiked and started putting these little pieces in my head of like, this is where they go. This is the kind of terrain they want. Now I can look in my Onyx and I could be like elk bedding, elk bedding, elk bedding, elk bedding, because I've been in the elk bedrooms and like I kind of know where they go to bed. And
yeah,
so if I didn't know where there was some elk, if I went to another unit like I did in New Mexico, I would go a couple days before my hunt and I would spend a couple days scouting. And I think that's a huge key to being successful is even if you're just going to drive around the unit to look at all the terrain and glass from a distance, maybe you could pick up where some elk are, but you just start learning and learning and learning and like adding that information to eventually solve the puzzle. Like, where is a public land over the counter elk going to be where I can put an arrow in them? Where do I need to be? You know, how early do I need to get up? Do I need to be hiking in the dark? Do I need to be at this place at 9 a.m.? Should I wait until the wind switches to go into his bedroom? Like, you start putting all these pieces together, like to where you can come up with a plan where you can like maybe get in bow range of a over the counter bull. So
Right.
yeah, scout your butt off. You know, go in the summertime if you can. Take a trip, learn the terrain, figure out where elk bedrooms are. Um, that kind of stuff's going to be really key to being successful. But if I didn't know where there was elk, and you said, "Hey, this mountain, you can hunt it tomorrow. Here's a tag," I would just get up in the early in the morning, go up there. I would listen in the dark. You know, I would glass from a distance. You know, maybe the night before if I could, and just kind of try and pick out where are some steep areas that look like they're places that elk would go, get in the shade, have some air blowing up over them, so that they're, you know, they like to do that. They're like, let's say elk have a alfalfa field down the valley that they're visiting every night. They want to probably bed high up on the mountain on a steep area where they can dive off if they get pressured or if there's a predator, but also that cool air will blow over them. So that, I mean, like what's a pattern that elk will, um, you know, like elk will follow. In a lot of areas, they follow that kind of pattern where they'll feed
Yeah.
down low and then they'll go bed up somewhere high. And so, you know, you could pick out that pattern. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how if what I'm saying is going to help you to kill an elk. I mean, I hope so, but
No, no, but I think, I mean, all of that's good stuff, Drew, but you said the key thing, dude, like stick to a unit, right, man? I don't know,
yeah,
dude, I'm sure you hear the same thing from people. Like, people are getting into elk hunting. For some reason, there's a massive, most people who are getting into elk hunting, they're getting into it via archery, right?
yeah,
Like, and from my perspective, that's like one of the harder hunts in the West is like archery. You know what I mean? So like
yeah,
you're kind of like jumping into the big leagues. But I think it's really hard because people go 1 year or maybe even 2 years and they're like, oh, well, Unit 25 sucks. Unit 26 sucks. 35 sucks. 43 sucks. 44 sucks. 49. Like, every unit sucks. It's like, yeah, they do.
49's
Well,
pretty
not
good.
49. Not 49's a draw. 49's a draw.
Yeah,
So yeah. But what I'm saying is just like all these units, all these units that everybody can hunt. People have to realize they all suck.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like none of them are like you can't just for 10 years go to a different unit and think all of a sudden you're going to end up in like some concentration of elk.
Yeah, it's not a magic. You know, like I always see people going on these forums and asking about these units, or they'll go on like the Facebook page and this unit, that unit. Stick to a unit. Pick one.
Yeah.
Like you said, they all suck. Pick one that sucks and learn it until it's marginal. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're gonna have more success because you know where the elk go. You know what private fence line they might be on. Like you're just gonna learn and learn and learn, and that's. I'm not sure what the percentage is. It's like 5% of the elk hunters or 10% of the elk hunters kill 90% of the elk.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, dude.
Something like
I
that.
don't. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know the exact percentage. I've heard it over the years.
dude. I don't. Yeah, I don't think. I don't even know if the stats exist, Drew. But for sure, dude. I think it might even be more extreme. You know what I mean? Because it's the same thing. Like I can be in a unit. So me and you can go in the same unit, and for you, it's statistically a 45% success rate unit, right? For me, it might be like 0.5% success rate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you really look at, like, you have the knowledge, you have the spots in that particular unit, but for somebody who doesn't, like, I don't think people understand, Drew, that like you go into this type of hunting, if you don't have some prior knowledge and you're not like working on that to build that up, your chances are not the stated 5-10%. That Colorado puts out. Yeah, dude, it's almost zero. And if you happen to kill one, like, awesome. But you got like the 1 out of 100, like, lucky. You know what I mean?
You
Like,
probably won't, and if you had a lucky horseshoe stuck up your butt, good for you. I'm really happy for you. I think
yeah,
that's
yeah, well,
awesome. And enjoy
you're
eating that elk.
yeah, and now
Exactly.
you're now you're cursed because you're gonna be
Yeah.
chasing that shit for the next 7 or 8 years. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah,
is
you're
all.
gonna be like,
Which
how did I do that? And if you're really motivated, you're gonna get to this point where you like start being more successful all the time.
yeah, yeah,
I would say the number one thing you can do if you're gonna hunt over the counter, get your ass in shape.
sure,
Really
yeah,
great shape. Because the mountains are huge. It doesn't seem like the terrain's that big when you're looking on Onyx in Illinois, but it's vast. It's covered in downfall. You're gonna be tired day 3. Like that's one thing where I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back into elk hunting. I ran like 900 miles. I lifted weights every day almost. I'm about to start my training routine all again, like for next year with even more vigor because I realized how much it paid off. Like
sure,
I've had the 6 knee surgeries. I'm getting older, so get in shape, stick with a unit. But like that's probably my biggest tip. Like get your ass in the best physical condition like you've ever been in your life. If you're coming on your first elk hunt, you're gonna need it. So
sure. What do
yeah,
you do, Drew? What do you do to prepare, man?
I run,
Yeah,
like trail run, and I lift weights. And then I really like this year I started using an app to count my calories. So I lost a bunch of weight. Um, I was trying to be like under 180 pounds by the time the elk season started. So I got to 175 and I was really stoked about that. Like just to be lighter, like
yeah,
whatever I can do. So this year I'll probably do a lot more leg days, probably do a lot more like hikes in the mountains, but really just like an overall fitness trying to be like as fit as I used to be when I tried to compete in skiing because like that was something that I took for granted. Like I would spend all winter hiking in the backcountry, all summer mountain biking. You go right into elk season, like, hey, cool, this is
yeah.
easy.
You're good to go. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but you
Yep.
live up at 8,000 feet. You're doing that stuff all the time. So like, if you live in Wisconsin, get your ass in the gym. It's
Yeah, yeah,
simple. It's really a simple equation. Like the more effort you put in, start in January, train for 9 months. Like ramp up your
yeah.
training, like taper it. Watch some videos on YouTube. There's combine some hypertrophy training with some trail running or like mountain biking, running, just mixing those two things together.
Yeah,
So
and dude, I'm not. It's funny, Drew. Like, dude, again, like there's just it's like a parallel universe for me, dude. I've never had to deal with fitness related to hunting, Drew, my whole life until I sold my outfitting business.
yeah, I bet.
Because when I was in my outfitting business, like I didn't do anything to stay in shape. I just was, I'm out. I lived at 8,000 feet, all that stuff. I was active all the time. But now, and it's probably age too, dude. Like I'm still pretty active, but not like when I go back to guide, particularly at elevation. I'm like, oh, holy
Yeah,
crap, dude! Like I can't. It's just not something you can just like start working on a month ahead of time. You know what I mean? It's a totally. It takes me longer to get back in shape, and it's just like a whole different deal. And there's so much debate, man. Like, what's the best way to, to prepare for it or whatever. And that's why I ask, because I'm always curious, like what has worked for different people. One thing I universally hear is what you said is like, if you're heavy, lose some weight. That's like
yeah,
a huge one. I personally, man, have found that core training helps a lot. You, I think it's because I'm like a tall, lengthy guy,
sure.
and I get a lot of back issues if I haven't kept up on my core strength.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I
for
mean?
guiding, like you're going to be packing a lot of meat, like especially if you're good at your job, like you're inevitably
Yeah,
packing quarters, and that would make a lot of sense. Like I packed a bull in New Mexico by myself this year, and I think yeah, like the core. I don't necessarily do core strengthening, but the trail running that I do, like I
sure.
do a freaking lot of it, and it really like strengthens your core. So,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
could see that, and me being short, like maybe I don't need to do as much of that stuff, but I think you tailor it specifically to like, you look at someone who's like a big muscular guy, like you maybe work on your legs more because you're gonna have to carry that weight.
sure.
Hire a personal trainer. I see. I like I'm not lucky, but I've got to rehab 6 knee surgeries. So like I learned a lot about like that kind of thing from just having to
Oh
fix myself,
yeah.
doing rehab.
Yeah, just the up and down, like injuries take you out, and then you gotta,
Yeah.
yeah, you gotta get back in the game. No, yeah, it is a huge one, man, and it's weird, Drew, because I'm glad you brought it up because for years, man, I kind of thought it was a bit of like, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, somebody starts talking to me about Cam Haynes or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's bullshit. You know what I mean? But now the more and more I'm like, no, this kind of makes dwelling on this subject actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think that's a perspective that, like you said, if you're living in the flat tops or living in that area, the Vail Valley, and you're constantly physically active, you don't need to train for elk hunting because you're living that life. I got a buddy
Right.
that guides up there now, and he he doesn't worry about physical fitness. Looks great, like
Yeah, yeah,
he
sure.
could pack elk all day. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
get
But
that.
but but they're the anomaly. Everybody
That
else is
yeah,
living. Yeah, yeah. Everybody else is
most
living a normal life.
most people aren't gonna like stop doing everything with their life, move to the mountains, and like
Right.
go live that lifestyle. So, but then most people want to elk hunt, live at sea level. Like that's I tried to do that. I moved to Kansas. I tried to go back to the mountains and elk hunt for a couple years. I wasn't in shape. It wasn't really that much fun. And that's when I came back to Colorado. I was like, I need to jump into this like full bore. You can't. What do they say? There's no such thing as halfway crooks. Well, there's no such thing as a halfway elk bow hunter. You're either
Yeah, yeah.
all the way or you're not getting a
Yep.
bull. You want to
Yep.
go. You want to go sit in camp and drink beers with your buddies while you get away from your wife, and I don't blame you. You know what I mean? Like some of that's valid,
Sure.
but just has a reasonable expectation. I had a friend of mine, a guy I really liked, um, passed away second season elk hunting, and he fell. I think
Oh, geez.
the rock that he was standing on. He was going down to camp at dark through some steep terrain, and the rock that he climbed up on to climb over went with him and rolled over
Oh,
him. But like, I told those guys when they were driving from Louisiana to Colorado to go look in some really steep terrain, and like, I just feel bad that it's not my fault, and like I feel bad that I told them that, but like
sure.
that's just a cautionary tale. If you're coming from sea level, you can die. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
freaking die elk hunting, and be prepared because it's a serious game. Mountains don't care about you; they just kill you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like that's something I learned skiing
Yep.
big mountains. No respect for you, and like that, you'll be dead. And
Right.
so, be
Yeah.
prepared.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and for sure, there's that extreme case, Drew, but there's also the perspective too that they don't care about your enjoyment. Like you
No.
being exhausted and all of that makes elk hunting so much less fun. You know what I mean? Like just being totally assed out after a day and a half of hiking around the mountains, and you think you're going to be hunting for 9 days. That is so it makes the whole experience miserable. You know what
No,
I
and
mean?
that's one of the reasons I tell people to come early and scout. Like, come on Wednesday, season opens Saturday, or like they're making the seasons weird now with the one opened on Monday, but come 3 days early. Spend the first 2 days hiking your face off. Spend the third day sitting in camp. Glass. Go drive in your truck. Go get them. Go fill yourself up with food. But like,
Yeah.
have a strategy to like try and acclimate just a tiny bit. And like, if you can, that will make a big difference. Like, I used to read this article, and this guy said that he used to go to Colorado 2 weeks early, go park his camper at 12,000 feet, and then every day he would go for a little bit further run just to acclimate himself to hunting at 12,000 feet. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really great, brilliant strategy. Like once you do it once, you'll understand what we're talking about. Like
Yeah.
the way the altitude just debilitates you and turns you into mush. So
Yeah. No, for sure, man. And I think that, dude, a lot of people hear this, and the problem, Drew, is they're like, oh, well, this just sounds like so much shit to do to go elk hunting. It's just the reality of it.
you
Y-
can't be a
Yeah.
halfway elk hunter. You have to either all the
Yeah.
way, 1,000%. And those are the guys that are killing more bulls. Like I expect that I'm gonna go kill an over the counter archery bull every year. Like that's,
Right.
and I don't have any doubt in my head that that's gonna happen. I think that's like a mindset thing too. Like decide in your
Yeah.
head, and then decide that I'm going to do absolutely everything that I need to do to get to that point. And it's like, then you'll be more successful. It's like setting goals. So like I set a goal. I want to sell like more alcohols than anybody ever has, that ever did or ever was. And like maybe I won't get to that goal. Still, it's my goal. And like
Sure.
wherever I get to is going to be a great point. And so like that's like kind of with my skiing, like or anything that you have to have wrap your mindset about. Like what are you going to do with your life? Like you want to be a lawyer? You want to be a freaking whatever? You want to be a teacher? You can be like the greatest teacher you ever could be in this world if you decide in your head that that's your goal. So like if you want to be an
Right.
elk hunter, decide in your head, I'm killing a bull. I'm going to do
Yeah.
whatever it is. Make a list, write down 10 things you can do to help yourself be successful in January and stick
Yeah.
to it, like,
Yeah. It
but
and I think too, Drew, like along those lines, man, is like if you're doing this type of hunting, the over the counter stuff, Colorado mountains, Wyoming mountains or whatever, you gotta have an understanding of how I hate to say it, but like the detrimental impact that watching social media will have on your perspective of what it's actually like. I dwell on this a lot, Drew, and,
yeah,
and I'm sure it's like preaching to the choir, but
yeah,
I think a lot of people, one of the reason they don't have as much success and as much fun as they should is they see what's on social media and they don't realize, like the anecdote I would use is, so I commented on somebody's bull, like a raghorn in Colorado. I said, I was like, oh, hey, like congratulations, awesome or whatever, right? Little barely legal raghorn. I knew the guy, I knew where it was from, and I genuinely meant it. Like that is badass. And I had somebody comment. They said, Cliff, like it's so nice that you comment on even like these small animals. And I'm like, dude, no. It's not about that. It has nothing to do with the size of the animal. It's that I know the overall context of the situation. Like that guy had to work his balls off to just kill a legal bull. And that's lost, man. Like if you don't realize that, I think it can be really distortive to your experience. Like this shit's really hard, and a lot of the big elk you see on Instagram and stuff, like they come from a different universe. You know what I mean?
yeah. There's different worlds. And that's what I said when I invented Elko. I want to get in. I want to be able to access that world a little bit. Then like this year, I bought a landowner tag for myself, which I've never done before. I've always hunted over the counter. I bought one because I needed to do that for myself.
Well, dude, and
Yeah,
I think it's if a guy can afford it, do it. Like
yeah,
getting access is a good thing for sure.
yeah. But that's like another way of like you're always going to earn it in some respect. So if you can buy access to that world, I'm not going to judge how you got access to that world. And there's
No.
a lot of people that are just hating people up the hill from them, and like I don't want to be that guy. So good for you. If you're shooting a 400-inch bull every year because you can afford it, I'm a little jealous, and I think that's freaking
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So,
No, me,
but
I agree,
but
dude.
if you're shooting a 4x4, I shot a 4x3 this year, the second to last day of the season, and I was stoked because, dude, it's not easy. And
Right.
what's your ultimate trophy? Do you want to kill a giant bull with a giant rack? Like this one I shot in Unit 61 is awesome, but like you're not going to shoot that in an over-the-counter unit in any reasonable chance every year. Like you're just not. And so like
Right.
for you to comment on someone's 4x4 and know from experience what it took to get that bull, and then someone's like, "Oh, I saw these bulls on social media," and blah, bashing you for doing it, they just don't understand.
Yeah, but
And
I think understanding the context is valuable to people. So they
yeah,
kind of know what they're getting into. You know, I
yeah,
guess that was my point, Drew. Is like, I think people get upset with themselves because they don't really understand like they're climbing a pretty steep mountain. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. If you're successful every year, that's an awesome accomplishment. If you're successful every couple years, that's an awesome accomplishment. I mean, like,
Yeah.
would you find the success of like, what is your definition of success when you go elk hunting? Is it just to like hike in the dark and see the sunrise like 7 mornings in a row? You know, watch the sunset, be in nature, listen to those sounds, and just like refresh your soul. That's like a huge thing that people miss. You know, like
Yeah.
you don't get to post that on social media, but
Yeah,
you can take that back to the to cubicle, or you can take that back to being a parent, and like that's just your perspective on things. Like I'm not impressed by someone that kills big bulls, but if you're an awesome dad and you kill big bulls, I'm more than impressed.
yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah,
So
no, I hear you.
you know what I mean. Like it is what it is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree, man. And I like my personal perspective on it. It's dude, it sounds super cliche, but all this shit, like you know if you're getting better at it. Like
yeah,
if this is like an endeavor you want to do, you know if you're getting better about at it. You don't really have to like compare yourself to other people. It's kind of a valueless endeavor to do that, you know. I just think elk hunting's weird that way because there is no like I can't like if I'm playing tennis or pickleball, I know exactly where I'm at,
yeah.
right? Because if that's my hobby, you know, if I'm playing golf with my buddies, I know like oh I'm getting better or I need to work on this or that. Elk hunting's if this is your obsession, I think it can be frustrating to guys because they don't know how to to monitor like am I getting better at it? Am I just do I just suck at this? You know.
I think you can judge if you're getting better at it by just the fact that you're still participating. You know,
Yeah,
and it'll come. You have to be patient with things. Like you don't start at zero and get to like being the best at something by being impatient. You get it
right.
by being dedicated, by figuring out what can you do. I saw somebody who said that they wake up every day and they say, "What can I do today to make myself a better elk hunter?"
Right.
And they probably kill a lot of bulls. So it's one of those things, man. It's an endeavor of like invested effort into like an ultimate goal of whatever your stated goal is, but like
Sure.
don't miss the big picture when you're going out. If you're getting to go elk hunting, one, like that's awesome in itself. You live in a country where you have the freedom to go hunting wherever you want in whatever state without any kind of like permission needed. You just buy the tag and you get to go hunting. Like how awesome is
Right.
something like that? So just having perspective, like we moved to Maryland in 2021 when I found out my dad was really sick and he wanted to buy a farm on the eastern shore of Maryland. I helped him with it, and we ended up moving in there and we having to like sell the house because there was mold in it. My kids got sick. My daughter had to have surgery on her ear. My dad passed away like almost immediately after we went back there. Like just things happen in this world to where like then you realize like when you get to go elk hunting, how special is this? Like this
Right.
is something that you can do that like will reverse all the effects of life and stress, and like just have a perspective that like, okay, I'm going to do everything that I can to get a bull, but I'm also going to enjoy the crap out of this experience. And
Yeah, yeah.
you don't get it back, so like your time's so limited. um, Stopping
Yeah.
and smell the roses on your journey through the elk woods, trying to get yourself a really cool video or photo to post on Instagram of you with a giant bull. It's not really about that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's irrelevant to the endeavor. But no, man. I totally agree with you on all that stuff. And I think it's valuable for people to hear that from somebody that's hunted a bunch. In this type of hunting. On that thought, Drew, I actually wrote a question down earlier. I'm curious, man, and I want to hear your honest opinion on it. When was the first year you hunted in Colorado?
hmm. It was probably 2004 or five, something
So
like that.
yeah, so
Yeah.
15, 20 years of elk hunting. How have they changed, man? Like and how have they, maybe on the vocalization front you can comment, but also like has the hunting changed population wise or anything like that? Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah. I mean, in some of the areas that I hunt, you've seen almost like the elk disappear from some of the areas, like very drastically. Um, so I mean, that's changed it. Like, there's not as many elk as there used to be in some of the spots that I hunt. um, with the pressure that, so I think social media and, YouTube is driving a lot of this, where people are trying to hunt the same style that they see on YouTube, or like they see that
Hmm.
they see these videos and these people that are marketing products, and they're watching marketing videos and taking it as like step-by-step guides to elk hunting. Do you know what I mean? So like, and
Yeah,
they're imitating that throughout the unit, and I think that also is like that cumulative effect of all of these people trying the same tactics diminishes the return to the people that are trying those tactics, if you know what I mean.
yeah. No, Drew, do you mind sharing like a hard example of that?
Um, yeah, like when I hunted with my buddy Monty this year, and he was using the traditional flat style reed that sounds like everybody else's flat style reed, and like we were hunting in a limited entry unit, but it still gets a lot of pressure, right?
Hmm.
Like those elk get called at all the time. So in like there's a different age class and structure to the herd and all that, but when he was trying the tactics that everybody else tries to see the results that he got versus the stuff that I was doing, he threw his flat reader away. He can now play my read, and like is gone gung ho after 40 some years of being the one tactic into doing what I'm
Right.
talking about, which is trying to go with a different approach. And like, if I'm successful someday, my tactic won't work.
Yeah, and you,
You know what I
it's
mean? So it's like,
no, no, yeah, dude. I think this is a great topic, Drew, because I've seen the same thing, man. Like, so you use the calling analogy or use the calling example makes perfect sense. I've seen it in, I mean, you look at mule deer hunting, right? Like, well, let's just like specifically talk about a unit because it's like impossible for people to draw, so it won't matter. But let's talk about 44, right?
yeah,
Like, we both know 44. 100% of the people who hunt 44 now find the highest glassing points and they glass off of it. And then to extend that, they glass with as many people as possible they can bring with them. I mean, if you're going to do that strategy, if glassing's your strategy, which to your point about YouTube, I talk about this shit all the time. So I'm like,
sure.
part of this, like glassing to me, it's a very fun way to hunt, and it is, and it's effective. But to your point, like you go into that unit now, and every glassing knob is got a guy on it, every single one of them. You know what I mean?
Covered in 6.5 Creedmoor shells too.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. And the thing, but the thing is like you nailed it with that. It's not that it's an ineffective strategy. It's just that if everybody else is doing the same thing, it brings down the effectiveness. Because if there's any bucks that are glassable, they're going to get glassed up like the first day. So,
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I just did a mule deer hunt in some pretty pressured units in third season, and I was hunting with some elk hunters, and so like the tactic that we wanted to use was glassing,
mhm.
glassing, glass your face off, glass till your head hurts. That's what we did, and we did find a number of animals, which we ended up like me and my buddy OJ. We passed everything we saw. I mean, he was wanting to shoot a 330 bull in an over counter unit. So like, you tell me how
Yeah.
hard that's going to be. And
Sure.
he's done it. He's did it before, so he's like, we can do it again. And I've killed some really nice bucks in some of these units. So I was like, I know what could be here, and I also have a full freezer. And so his father-in-law
Sure,
got a
why
bull, his
not?
daughter got a bull. So we were just like, okay, we don't need to shoot anything. We're just going to keep doing this. So we
Sure.
glassed, and from doing that, and then doing my hunt in New Mexico. So I had a tag that was from the 15th of October to the 19th of the October to the 23rd, and I tried to do that same tactic: glass. And I even saw bulls where, like, if I saw a mature bull, they would like go and hide behind a tree, so you couldn't
Yeah.
glass them. Like literally, I saw that happen maybe 4 or 5 times. Like when I scouted for like 4 days before the season, and like I saw the bull end up shooting. I watched him when the sun hit him run to the timber.
Yeah.
He like noticed that the sun is on him, and he literally sprinted down the hill, got in the timber, and kept bugling. And I was just like, from the mule deer perspective, same thing. Like I never saw a buck I wanted to shoot doing that tactic. And I think my strategy for the next hunt that I do that will be completely different. I'm going to get into bedrooms. I'm going to go walk into as many bedrooms as I can. I'm going to skip the glassing. Like, I know where mule deer are potentially bedded in some of these units, and that's going to be my tactic. And
Right.
I killed a buck in 2016 doing that, where like no glassing, just walking bedrooms, killed like 185-inch 4x4.
Right.
So, I think there's a lot to what you're talking about. Like sometimes swimming with every other fish is not going to be as effective as being the outlier.
Right. Right.
So
And you see it when people are coming from like different worlds of hunting.
yeah,
I actually interviewed this guy named Eric, and I feel horrible because I can't remember his last name, but he went on his first elk hunt. I've gone back and forth with him a bunch over the last like year and a half as he planned this hunt, and then he had a fun hunt. Wasn't successful, but really like took notes during it. We did a podcast together. It was fun to do, Drew. But one thing he said to me that was really interesting is he had some elk kind of figured out, and he's like, man, I do a lot of saddle hunting. He does tree stand hunting, and then the saddle
tree
hunting on
saddle.
the tree.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're probably more familiar with
I
it than
I have one. I
but
love it, but it's
yeah,
yeah.
but he goes, he says to me, he says, I think I would have killed a bull if I just would have, used my tree saddle and gone up there. And what's weird is when he told me this, Drew, it was in my mind, I'm like, well, why didn't you do that? And it's because there's so much pressure to him as like a new elk hunter. He's like, well, that's not how you hunt elk. That's not what Cliff talks about. That's not what other people talk about. And it's like, well, dude, doesn't mean it's not effective. You know
Well,
what I
I
mean?
mean, like if you want to know a really, really effective strategy to kill a bull, you're a new hunter. Get yourself a couple of trail cameras. Go to the mountains in the summer. Put them on some wallows. And then you do the math. Check them like right before the season. Bring your tree saddle, or your stand, or whatever you want to get in a tree in. Bring a blind. I mean, depends on how you want to hunt it, but like getting up in the tree will disperse your wind a little easy, and like you're probably used to that hunting whitetails. But go find a couple wallows, put a trail camera on them. Find the one where a bull's hitting it once a week. Sit there for 7 days. You'll kill a bull.
Yeah,
Have
sure.
the discipline. Is that the most popular way to do it? No, but it definitely works. It's something that
Yeah.
I've never stuck to because I make calls. It's like, okay, I want to call one in, right? Like
Yeah, you like calling them in. Yeah, which is a factor
I've
too.
every bull I've ever called, I called in myself. So like, or every bull I've ever shot, I called in. Or like OJ helped me call in the one this year, but we called it in. Like that's how I've chosen to hunt. But that doesn't have to be your chosen method. Like
Right.
find a strategy that other people are not doing, and like it can be highly effective. So,
Yeah.
and I know guys that shoot bulls over wallows and over the counter units, or units that take 0 points to draw. Like they do it all the time. So
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, yeah, no, there's value in like looking at other things, and it's intriguing to me. I don't think people who maybe maybe they don't have as much involvement in the hunting world, they don't realize like how much this stuff has changed over the years. You know what I mean? Like, dude, when I was a kid, everybody pushed timber to kill elk. Like
yeah,
if you talk to my dad, he's like my dad, who was an outfitter for a decade in the same areas we're talking about. He in his mind, he's like, "What are you guys talking about? Like, what is this shit with binoculars on a tripod? Like, what is? What do you? That's not how you do it. If you want to kill elk, like you run them up out of a saddle and the guys in the saddle blast them. You know what I mean? Like that's not even a strategy that people really talk. That like is a thing now. But it's amazing.
I tried to get my buddies. So like my buddy OJ and his dad were hunting. I'm like, dude, you guys go sit up there, and I'll just walk the freaking whole canyon, and they're gonna come up through the top, and you guys blast them. But they didn't want to do that, and like
Yeah, yeah, sure.
it's all
Which
good.
yeah, it's yeah, and I'm not I mean, I totally
Yeah,
get why certain styles develop or whatever, but I think it's easy to forget that, dude, styles of hunting have gone up and down for
yeah.
decades.
I mean, like we could go back and forth. Like, what's an effective way to kill an elk? Get a rifle tag for a second season. and go walk through a bunch of timber really quietly with
Yeah.
a cow call, just really softly. Like they'll stand there and look at you for like 4 seconds while you get your gun up and blast them.
Yeah.
Like it works.
Sure.
So, but like most people, like you said, they want to do what they see other
Yeah, they
people
want to do
doing.
it. They want to do it a certain way, man. No, it's just it's an interesting thought, dude. So I enjoy talking to you about it.
Sure.
Drew, let's talk about your calls real quick, man. One, I want to give you a chance to answer my question about the volume aspect of it on the elk reel. Have you changed anything? And I need to get your new version, man. Have you
Yeah.
changed anything, or is that user error?
Okay. So the first elk call you got, I made it by hand. All the pins were handmade. The dimensions were a little different. So
Okay.
I did change it just a tiny bit from that. But also like it is a technique thing. Like
Yeah, that's pretty loud. That's
I
pretty
can get
loud.
I can get I can get enough volume out of this that like it works, and then adding these two calls together, like it's ridiculous. So
Well, yeah, and then the question is that I guess a follow-on question, man. Do you find that you need the volume?
volume has its applications. So yes and no. Um, if you're trying to reach out there to find an elk,
Locate elk or whatever. Yeah, sure.
yeah, like some volume can help, but like I've used this elk reel and located elk just by cow calling that were like well over like reasonable distance
Yeah,
to where we
thousand
had to
yards
like
away.
where
Yeah,
we had to drop down oak brush face and go up another one and go to the top of the mountain and get to where the
yeah.
elk are. So
Well,
like
they're hearing. They're hearing. Yeah,
yeah. So they'll hear you a long way, but then their hearing is better than ours, and they probably hear a different spectrum than we do.
right.
So I think that's one of the things that potentially my call does, that when you start the note, you get in that high pitch, but how much of that is not audible to you and I?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Like
I
there could
don't
be
yeah, I
some.
don't even know, and like I've always wanted to do some research on it, but like what do elk even hear that we can't
Right,
hear? People don't even know. Like it's not been like
right.
researched, but
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it'd be hard to research it
but
anyway.
yeah,
Like
I think you can get an appropriate amount of volume out of the call. You can mix in some other calls if you really want to get loud, and bugling with this. I mean, you could get the
yeah.
volume that you need.
It sounds like when you bugle with it, it sounds like you're lip balling without having to.
Yeah, because of the
How
way well, it's just the way that the reed sits in this call, like like where I add in.
yeah.
I'm just adding in like a sound with my voice, so I'm doing that with this, like just
Yeah.
adding that in with that. But you can also.
Yeah,
I
I
am
got you.
I am like
You
doing
you are
something with
yeah,
my.
yeah, yeah.
I'm doing
Yep.
something with my lip, but it doesn't
Right.
sound like it. But yeah, I need to
Drew,
make
let
that. I need to make that call for more people's palates. So I mean, like anybody can get it right now, and they can file it down to fit their palate. And if like you're really motivated, you're gonna make it fit, and you'll be able to get the sounds I get. But this fits my palate, so
Yeah, I
like
got you.
I've got to cross that boundary where like I've got a lot of ideas on how I'm gonna produce this for everyone, but it will work for you if you're handy. You can make this fit. So
Right.
like there's some
Now,
problems that I need to solve, and it is what it
so
is.
you're let's do this, 'cause that new call is intriguing to me, man. Like I'll have to get one from you. But the classic elk reel you have, that I found that call, like for a beginner, is pretty easy to use. But let's say that I came to you, Drew, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna work on this fitness thing. I'm gonna work on some scouting, all of that stuff. But I really don't have time to dwell on calling. What would you tell a guy to do with that call? Like what sounds did you tell him to master
Okay.
if he was gonna be kind of limited?
Well, you want to be able to do your calf vocalizations, right? Like so you want to learn how to make that calf vocalization, and then learn how to make a learn those two sounds. So you're going to
Yeah.
learn a more mature cow and a calf. And you're going to be able to mix those sounds and sound like a calf that's lost and her mom's like, get the hell over here. And like, I mean, I'm not sure that's what they're saying, but like, that's my opinion
Sure.
of those conversations. Is just like when they're traveling through the woods, they constantly mew at each other to kind of keep contact in the timber. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those kind of sounds are going to be your most effective sounds, like the kind of sounds that elk make most of the time.
Yeah. So you think a guy could handily kill elk just with those two sounds?
Two sounds, yeah.
Yeah.
You can call an elk. Um, I have some opinions about bugling. So if you're
Go for it.
if you're cow calling, got a bull responding, don't bugle. Why? What are you going to
Yeah. Why,
gain?
why
What
complicate it?
would you gain by bugling at that point? You're,
Right.
you know, and I'll cite a specific example. So we were hunting a fence line, and I used to hunt with this guy named Ben all the time. Love Ben. He's a great guy, but he kind of got out of hunting, and so we were hunting this fence line. Ben's like standing where he can see the fence. He can see this elk coming towards the fence. There's a bull. He was a 6x6, and one side was all broke up. So scenario is he's been in some fights, right? Like
Sure.
I'm cow calling like 100 and some yards behind Ben or whatever. Got this bull coming. I don't know he's coming. We're not in communication. So like
Hmm.
bull's not bugling. He's coming silent. He's already had his butt whipped a bunch of times. So he's coming silent to these cow sounds. I bugle. He stops. He starts looking around. I bugle again. He just turns around and leaves. He didn't want to fight.
Right.
So like if you're getting them to come in with just cow sounds, if you bugle, you could potentially screw yourself, So
Right.
if he's bugling and you're bugling back and forth, that's one thing. That's my opinion. And like, so, and that's a gray area. Like I'll mix in bugling with cow sounds all the time because that's what you hear when you hear herd elk. They'll just be freaking making all kinds of racket. So,
Right.
but like back to the simplicity of it. Yeah, you don't have a million years to learn how to be like the most amazing elk caller in the world. Just learn the two sounds, mix
Right.
those together. Do it when you're walking through the woods, stomp logs and break branches. You don't need to learn how to do that. You can
Right.
throw rocks. You can do all these extra things to like add to your calling just to add realism. And like that can make a difference. Like a huge difference. I've had elk heard me walking through heavy timber so many times it just lit up and bugled at me.
Oh yeah. Sure.
And I'm sure you've had the similar experience. So
Yeah,
like
dude, I've had two bulls now, Drew, come in silently on me when I was breaking stick. You're like you set camp up and you break some firewood. I've had bulls show up right there within 20 yards staring at me.
yeah,
They
they're
think
like,
that they think stick breaking is a bull raking or whatever.
well, yeah, and I mean, and like I know you've heard like a bunch of cows moving through the timber. It's a
Oh yeah.
it's a racket. So
Oh
elk
yeah.
elk aren't quiet. Don't worry if you're being like tipped. Don't. I wouldn't even try and tippy toe around. Like you're not going to be able to anyways. But if you break a stick,
Right, sure.
and that reinforces in the elk's head, I need to get over there. I might be getting some
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah. Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, or just like, "Oh yeah, I heard something. Yep. Oh, that's another elk."
more elk.
Yeah,
Yeah, more
yeah.
elk. Like,
For sure.
So and
Yep.
also, but realize this: if you blow a call, you give up your position.
Right.
So realize that too. Like if somebody's calling for you, shut up. Because
Right.
as soon as you call, they know exactly where you are. You've changed where they're going to hang up at. And an elk will, they're like turkeys. They naturally want to hang up and look and
Yeah,
make
sure.
sure that what they're hearing is what they're seeing. So like that's where like a lot of old Primos videos, they'd be like, "Oh, set up in heavy timber. You want to call her 100 yards behind you," stuff like that. Like, um, don't if you don't need to call, don't call. So like,
Right. Sure.
can
Yeah,
screw
yeah,
you
yeah.
over too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, what I always say is that like you got to realize that elk kind of see with their ears, and when you call they don't know generally where you're at. They know exactly where you're at. Like they
Yeah.
know the tree you're next to. And so you got to kind of factor that into all your strategy, when you're going to call, when you're not going to call,
Well,
all that.
the one 6x6 I didn't shoot this year because he busted me. I like ran back 50 yards and made a bunch of cow sounds, and then ran forward to where I had been calling from, acting like, oh, he's gonna think I'm back there. He knew right where I was. He came right to that spot I had been calling from, and got so close to me I couldn't even get drawn on him. I was like, ah,
Yeah, yeah,
screwed myself by
yeah, yeah,
making a tactical error. I mean, then that's another big thing. Like, where's the elk going to hang up at? You're going to learn these kind of things, like
yeah,
from experience. But generally, when elk should be able to see the cows, they will stop there.
yeah,
So you got to think about that. Where's going to be my hang up point if I'm setting up to call, especially if you're calling for yourself? Like, it's not just you're calling in a bull. You're trying to call in a bull, get drawn, and shoot it, and you're like the caller. That
right.
adds another element to where like you've got to be pre-planning in your head. Once you get the bull come in, start thinking about that stuff like right away. Like, where is he going to
Yeah,
hang up? Where do I need to be?
yeah,
If he's coming, run back and call, maybe run forward, but don't call again. Because,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, because every time you do, you tell him where, and he's gonna know exactly, like you said, he knows exactly where you're at, and
like
it's
a freaking radar seeking elk, he freaking
yeah,
tune in on you and just come to your spot.
yeah,
It's
and
crazy.
it's really easy to overlook it in the moment, right? Like it's very easy to think about it a little bit, but then compromise, right? Compromise on like a shitty setup, and if you do that enough, you'll get ingrained in your brain that like, no, I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out just right. You know what I mean? Or you'll run into problems every time.
You get go turkey hunting because like that's something that you can do that will make you a better elk hunter.
Right.
Like the it's very similar game. So the more you can play the game, the more practice you get, you
Sure.
know. And like some of the best elk hunters I know, like we both know Jay Scott. Jay's an awesome turkey hunter.
Yeah.
There's a reason that dude calls in so many elk because he
Sure.
he's just done it like a million times in so many different scenarios. So like the more practice you can get, call coyotes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the
Um,
concepts are the same, right?
yeah,
Like if guys that are, I mean, you mentioned predator hunting coyotes and stuff. The guys that are really good at killing coyotes, it's the same exact thing. Their setups, they set up a specific way every time, just like a good elk hunter, a good elk. Like I had, I had a couple guys tell me, or they're asking me, they're like, well, the problem we were talking about shot placement on elk, and they're like, well, every time the only thing I ever have is a quartering two shot. I want to figure out how to do my arrow setup or whatever so I can kill on a quartering two shot. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to kill on a quartering two shot. What you need to do is step back and think about why you only are getting quartering two shots. You know what I mean? Because if you set up differently when you're calling them in, you'll quit. You'll get better shots. You
yeah,
know what I
because
mean?
all my archery bulls have been like totally broadside. So
Yeah.
what am I doing differently than they're doing? I mean,
Yeah, you're computing. You're looking around, figuring out like, okay, how's that elk going to come in here? You know
yeah,
what I mean? I think that's all it is. It's just some thought process. And one thing, to me at least, Drew, that I think is actually easier with elk over turkeys is elk. If you just pull your head out of your ass for a moment and you look around at the terrain and the vegetation, you can guess pretty good how that bull's going to come in.
yeah, and like you said, I mean, like probably you got a lot of experience calling elk, but like that's the thing with it. You have to learn to put effort into it and get yourself a level of knowledge, and you'll start to learn exactly what you're talking about. The vegetation will dictate where you set up.
Right.
The
Yeah, yeah.
terrain and the vegetation. Generally when you're turkey hunting, it's flat, and
Yeah. Well, and a turkey, he'll go under a log or whatever. I mean, a bull elk, they generally don't like to hit their antlers on shit if they can avoid it.
no,
You know what I mean?
mm-mm.
So you
They
can
don't
look
want to.
around.
They don't want to come into like a big tangle. They'll
Yeah, yeah,
skirt it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, like it is similar in the fact of the animals, their nature. When they gobble or when they bugle, they're attracting females to them. So cow elk will go to a bull that's bugling, and they know
Sure.
that. And so like you're trying to reverse it. You're trying to make a bull come to the cows, or you're trying to make a bull come to you, when his nature is to stand there and bugle. And like I think like if you go up to Rocky Mountain National Park, this will maybe go into like what elk are saying. Like you'll see elk that'll be like making that kind of like just
Yeah.
here I am, ladies. And
Yeah.
then you'll hear other elk that are like doing that kind of sound, which I think is like I'm seeking you, trying to attract you, but I'm also like on the move.
Yeah.
So and like that's a big like debate or whatever, like what are they saying, but like their nature is to sit there, be the king of the hill. I have 13 cows already. I'm gonna sit there and
Right.
just like this is how big and bad I am, and I'm gonna sit here and I want you to come to me.
Yeah,
And so
which is even obvious where they do it. Like in areas where they don't get the shit hunted out of them, they're gonna do it in the wide ass open, just like a
yeah.
turkey's gonna strut in the wide ass open.
Oh yeah, he'll
You
be
know
out
what I
there
mean?
strutting. Like if you hunt a turkey on like 1,300 acres, never gets hunted, he'll be out in the middle of the field gobbling his face off. If
Yeah,
you hunt turkeys like Wisconsin on a bunch of 40 acres that are like everyone's hunting, ha,
yeah,
have
yeah,
fun.
yeah,
First of
yeah.
all, have fun. It sharpens your game. You might not get one, but you're earning these like knowledge points, if you will, of
Yeah,
like
yeah, sure.
becoming a better hunter. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Which
why I
is
tell
fun.
people.
Yeah, which is fun, man. I think
Yeah,
that's
it is
dude.
fun.
Yeah, to me that's the whole point of the whole
I
thing, Drew.
mean,
Is like just get better at it.
you could put me in both scenarios. Like, let me hunt your unpressured turkeys and let me hunt your pressured turkeys. I'm gonna enjoy it both,
Yeah,
like in a
yeah,
different respect. But like, yeah, everybody wants to have an easy hunt. It's generally not the case, and whatever. Like, you just got to have a mindset.
yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. Well, dude, I've taken a ton of your time, man.
yeah,
I really appreciate it, Drew. We've covered some good stuff. Two questions, or just
sure.
one question, man, to finish up. And let's, if you can, outside of calls, underrated gear, overrated gear. Do you have any thoughts on that? And if it's within the
Yes.
calls, that's fine too. Whatever works,
I
man.
mean, I've
Cliff's Hunter. I created this knife from iteration in the field. It has been modified and perfected for the backcountry use case. It is my belief that in terms of all-around knives, this is the last knife that an elk hunter, mule deer hunter, sheep hunter, goat hunter will need to buy. Go check it out on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. In the top right, click shop, then Cliff's Hunter. All the details are there.
I love gear. I say I don't love it, but I really actually do.
Yeah.
I worked in a ski shop forever. You know, I have like every freaking toy you could have for hunting and fishing. Like, I love gear. So, what's underrated gear for hunting? Um, in the mountains for elk? Man, I think your rain gear. Like it's something that most people are like, oh, rain gear, but like keeping dry and keeping warm and being happy while you're out there, like that's really
Sure.
important. So like, how are you going to stay dry when you're out there? What kind of stuff are you going to carry on you? You know, like lightweight rain gear, or do you want to sacrifice a little bit of weight for something that's going to be a little bit more, a little better when it really starts getting going on you? Um,
Right.
so like I always carry the absolute best rain gear that I can carry, because you don't want to be out in the middle of the freaking mountains in a situation where like you're soaked, and now you're
Yeah.
now you have to like figure out what you have to do for survival and stuff like that. So like
Right.
it's
What do you use?
I have some Under Armour like AAA or Gore-Tex stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's a little heavier,
Yeah.
but and nothing works perfectly for that. Like, as you
Correct.
know,
Yeah.
like dude, there is no rain gear that works like it should.
No.
You're either all the way dry from the outside and sweating in the rain gear,
Yeah.
or it eventually gets permeated to where it's not gonna be a rain jacket, but it
Yeah.
is allowing it to breathe a little bit. So
Yeah,
that's
it's just figuring out where you want to be on that spectrum. I mean, there's a reason like most Alaskan guides are wearing waders.
Yep.
You know, if there's good,
Exactly.
you know, like if there was rain gear that did everything and kept you dry all the time, they wouldn't be wearing waders, you know.
My favorite hunting pants, I gave them away that they were triple layer Gore-Tex bibs.
Oh,
And,
okay.
I'm always pulling my pants up. I don't have any hips, and my freaking pants are always just slipping down, always pulling my belt up. And I love those bibs. And if I could find another pair of bibs, Under Armour, if you guys make some bibs, send me a pair because make some. They're
Gotta get some new
awesome.
ones.
Other camo company bibs are great for guys that just don't want to pull their pants up all day long. Just, I don't know why that's so important, but like I end up putting too much stuff in my pockets, and that's like one of the biggest frustrations I have hunting is wearing a pack, having my pants, and like they're constantly falling down all day
Yeah,
long.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
put my rangefinder in there.
Have you tried suspenders?
No, that's probably my next step. So I
Yeah,
thought
yeah. I
about that
mean,
this year.
but
So
you deal with the same shit, man, because I have the same problem, Drew. That now you've got another layer of stuff on your back, right? So now you got like your bino harness, your backpack plus suspenders. So that's the only downside, right? You
yeah,
gotta
but I
deal with
might
that.
go to it because like I literally freaking walk around in the woods all day, especially when you're packing meat. And like I don't know what it is about the pack or just like my anatomy. It
Yeah, it
makes
just
my
pushes you.
freaking just pushes your
Yeah,
pants down. You're always pulling them up, and then you got your pack on, and you got your. It's just a cluster.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's a
um,
constant battle. Do you got
over
one? Yeah,
overrated
overrated.
overrated gear. Um, Probably people's weapons. I think people are like so like gear conscious of okay, let's say specifically like your arrow. People want to shoot these heavy arrows and they're worried about front of center and this and that and well, dude, just hit the elk in both lungs
Yeah,
with a decent arrow and a decent broadhead. But
yeah,
like you're so focused on all this stuff that like the bows from when I started hunting were awesome. Like it's more important like where you're gonna put your arrow than what it is or blah blah blah. How much did you pay for your broadheads? Like obviously you want to use a good broadhead that's well constructed, but
right.
like I think all this stuff is just fun for hunters to look at.
Yeah,
And more importantly is your shot placement. And I'm
yeah, yeah,
sure
dude.
yeah.
It's a lot of it's just mental masturbation, dude. And
Yeah.
dude, I'm guilty of it too because I've had a couple guys on here that are big arrow guys, and I find it fascinating to talk about. But the anecdote that I'll give you, man, is I was guiding with an Apache guy here beginning of October, and super accomplished hunter, older guy now. Like I used to watch him on I used to watch him on VHS tapes way back in the day. So it was so fun to hunt with him, you know. And his name's Larson, and I got to talking to him. I think he's killed like 20 bulls with his recurve.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
I asked him, I was like, Larson, what weight's your arrow? And he looked at me and he's like, I don't know. And I was like, holy shit, like
I
that
don't
is
know.
like,
I don't know what weight
yeah,
my arrow is.
yeah,
But I know
like.
this. I could tell you that I went back to a lighter arrow this year, and I did that because a long time ago I read this article about how if you had 11 yards of margin of error, like with your arrow,
Yeah,
how like because you might not range right or like you might not guess right, but
elk might move.
you want to give yourself the biggest range. Okay, so like the most common way I miss is high or low, right?
Yeah,
So I want to give myself the best margin of error is a lighter arrow that's going to be at that elevation for the longest time of its flight. So like let's say it's 11 yards. And
right.
if I go to the arrows that I were shooting, I'm not going to like name brands because I don't really care, but like I
Yeah,
started shooting a heavy arrow because it was really popular on social media and everybody was shooting it like, oh cool. It's like maybe I need to shoot a heavy arrow. Maybe I'm not getting enough penetration. Even
sure.
though I've gotten pass through shots on bulls with what I used to shoot.
Right.
So 2022 in Kansas, I shot a buck that I thought was 30 yards right above his lungs twice and spent, 2 days looking for him. Third day, I saw him feeding in a cornfield. And I was like,
Jeez.
I'm done with these heavy arrows. It was totally my fault that I messed up that shot, but I would like to give myself more margin for error with my
Yeah.
range estimation. So this year I went back to a lighter arrow. So,
Yeah.
but does it matter what brand or how many grains per inch? Not really. just
Right.
not like you said, your buddy Larson. He doesn't
Yeah.
think about that.
No.
He knows what he's using is going to kill the crap out of a bull. He just has to hit it in the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
spot.
Like, and
Yeah,
it was just like his reaction was like it wasn't. He was asking. He was almost. His reaction was basically like, "Why are you asking me that? Like, what? Who cares?"
yeah,
You know? But it is. It's a crazy, interesting debate, dude. And I've done the same thing, Drew. I've gone from, 480 grain arrow to 600 grain arrow and everything in between, and dealt with the same trajectory. It's just, yeah. It's like, well, the thing about it, dude, is it's literally a circular argument because
yeah.
we're talking about physics. So there's pros and cons. You know what I mean? Like, so we could talk about it forever.
Do
You know?
do what makes you happy. Make
Yeah.
sure that you understand that an elk hit in both lungs doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
One that you don't hit perfectly, it sucks.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
sucks on like a level that you can't comprehend because I have looked for bulls that have been hit bad in the woods, in the mountains, at elevation through deadfall, and spent days doing it, and it's never. We found
No.
one. We found one bull over the years that we hit bad or poor. I mean, I haven't hit a whole lot of them like this, but like one bull that was hit one lung in the liver. We found it like 2 miles away, just randomly. A guy during first rifle season found my buddy's bull and told him about it. So
Yeah.
like, that's got to be like your number one goal when you're shooting at elk. 2 lungs. Make sure you pick your spot and that's something people say. Hey, pick a spot. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I'll look at my little deer over here. Well, when I deer hunt, man, I pick a spot 4 inches up from where his arm meets his body. And that's what I think in my head. So like if you're thinking about where you pick a spot on elk, be thinking about that. Like
Yeah.
what does pick a spot mean? Does it mean pick
Right.
a piece of hair or does it mean pick a pick a geometry on the bull where you can look at the bull like where his leg meets his body and you're having your head like you want to aim 8 inches up from that spot or 10 inches up from that spot, and that's how
Right.
and that's something that this year after bow hunting for like forever, I finally decided in my head, what does that even mean? Pick a spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, yeah. Yeah. And I like your description of it. My interpretation of it, I guess maybe overcomplicates it a little bit, but I totally agree with you, Drew. Like, I don't really care about your arrow, what you're shooting, whatever. It has got to go through both lungs. And that means, like, when I think about picking a spot, I literally think, like, how is this arrow going to go through both lungs? Because at the same time, you have to equate, like, if that bull steps like, if he's looking to my left and he steps his left foot 1 foot towards me and quarters to me 1 foot, I'm going to blow my arrow out his guts or his liver and we're not going to find him.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
he's gonna die,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have a hell of a time.
Yeah.
A terrible
Like,
time.
to me, it's like literally picking a spot is like, what spot on that elk is this arrow guaranteed to go through both lungs?
Yeah.
Because that's how you kill them.
And I
And
think
the thing
that's
that's and the
great
thing that's
insight.
what's crazy, Drew, is like, if you go through both lungs, like I get people that say this to me, Drew. They say, "Oh, this guy double lunged this bull, and we tracked blood for 400 yards, and then we didn't find him." It's like, no, you didn't double lung him, because if you double lung them, they're dead.
Yeah, you're assuming and you're making an ass out of you.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, like I know what I mean. I get the mindset. Like, the shot looked good, but somehow that arrow didn't go through both lungs.
Elk that are hitting both lungs don't go anywhere. And
Yeah.
that's an absolute 100% fact. You could attest, I could attest. Like, that is factual. Make sure you hit them in both lungs. Like you're saying, interpret the angle that the elk is sitting. Make sure you're shooting for the offside lung, and it's going to go
Right.
through the front lung. And any
Yeah.
other combination, like heart shots are good too, but like elk have lungs that are like freaking 16
Sure.
inches long. Aim for
Right.
that because and they're going to fill up with blood. And the bull I shot this year when he took 10 steps and fell over dead,
Yeah, they die.
that's what you want. And the opposite of that is like the worst experience you're going to have in the elk woods.
Yeah.
Beyond like losing somebody up there or something like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you track one for 100, 150, 200 yards, your chances
Don't
ultimately getting them or low?
don't jump it. Yeah, go 100 yards on your track. Onyx has a thing. It's I don't know what app you use, but you can freaking tag on Onyx where you hit the bull, and then you can go and hit, like go to that point on your
Yeah, yeah,
Onyx,
sure.
and it tell you exactly how far you've gone.
Yeah,
If you get to where it says I've gone 100 yards, leave.
yeah, because
Come
you got
back
problem. Yeah, yeah.
4 hours at minimum. If you jump that bull, and that bull that we ended up finding that was that one bull that we found, he did jump it.
Yeah.
So if you're not like 1,000,000% confident on your shot that bull, like if you didn't see that bull dead or you've gone 100 yards, you need to leave
Yeah.
and figure out. And like, if you've deer hunted your whole life, you might be much more attuned to that. But if this is like a new guy and you just started hunting, like I shot a buck in 2022 in Unit 44 with my bow, and right when he had been scratching his head with his back foot before I
Okay.
shot him. Right when I touched the arrow off, he put his head back to scratch his back foot again. I shot him through his neck. The arrow penetrated partly into his body cavity, but like obviously I didn't get 2 lungs.
Right.
So this mule deer buck goes running by me, blood streaming down his side, but also like the arrow through his neck, and like
Mm-hmm.
then I'm discombobulated. I'm like, okay, this is where errors start compounding. He went over and crashed, and I was like, this wasn't perfect scenario. We need to leave. And me and my buddy, and like he knew about this buck, and I don't want to name his name because
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to make him upset, but um, we were
That's all
like
good.
arguing back and forth in the heat of the moment, and it's like he's like, dude, I can see the knock over there. It's raining. Let's walk over there, and we might be able to put another arrow in him or whatever. I'm like, no, dude, we just need to come back, and back and forth. And finally, I decided in my own head that I was going to agree with him. It's my fault. We walked over there. Buck jumped up, ran down the hill, went on private, never found it. So
Jeez. Yeah.
it's like any situation that you doubt, you should leave, and you should come back. And
Yeah.
this isn't like I left a deer in Kansas overnight and came back to a skeleton. This isn't Kansas. You'll be okay. The
Yeah,
meat will
yeah,
be
sure.
good. So,
Yep.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, for sure. No, good.
Anyways,
Yeah, good ones to end on, Drew. Dude, where can people see your calls? Where can they follow you? Follow you? All that stuff.
our social media is just Real Game Calls, and then I have all my calls online. I'm not sure exactly. So, like, I've been in transition with this company since I moved back to Colorado. I have turned down like big box stores. I've turned down everybody. I need to make more of them, and that's generally my biggest problem. Is like, how do I keep the quality that I have and make 100,000 from whatever I'm making
Right.
now? So I'll get to that. It's available online. Um, please be patient with me. It's just me. So like, I'm gonna hire some employees back here in Colorado, but like, for the past year, I don't want to make excuses, but I've been a single dad most of the time. Things that
Yeah,
are
I get
way
it.
more important than ever selling a call, and you can reach out to me, but be patient. Like, I'm a good guy. I have best intentions. I've never not sent anybody a product, but this isn't like Midway USA where I have a shipping system.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, sure.
be
Well,
patient.
yeah, it's a long time till elk season, so people can hit you up now and they'll get their calls.
Yeah. Make
So
sure you get it ordered. Like, I don't want to like mess up your hunt. And like, you're like, oh, people hit me up in the middle of elk season, or like they look for their calls right before the season. Please just understand that like my production and my shipping isn't like the
right.
best thing that I do. The best thing I do is give you something that's going to give you effective sound. Anyways, I
Yeah, yeah,
appreciate it, dude. I love chatting and hunting with you. I like following you on social media and seeing where you're at with it.
yeah.
Finally
You
getting to
too, man. It's
chase some
good.
hammer bulls on private. That sounds fun to
Yeah.
me.
No, I've been having fun. But I'll tell you, this is the first year I didn't guide in Colorado, and I missed it, Drew. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I missed the mountains. I hunted a lot of mountains this year, but not, home's home forever kind of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
You get to
so
do
I'm
any hunting on your own, or just guiding?
this year I killed a cow on my own.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I get a lot of hunting in. I got no complaints in life.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? But dude, thanks for coming on, man. I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Thank you, Cliff. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome.
If you enjoy this content, do me a huge favor. Subscribe on whatever platform you consume it on. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever works for you guys. Everything else is on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. Go there and it's going to be very apparent to you that I work my ass off just to not have a real job. All the hunts I guide, all the seminars I put on, all the unique experiences I offer, and the membership site, all the details are there.